god, and it goes back. It's actually a Semitic god.
Wasn't the swastika the symbol of that god?
No, no, but
No,
we talk about the
swastika's much
swastika.
older.
But they use the swastika because of the creating confusion, a big confusion. But Nazi is not just a name, and it's a Semitic god. It's a Sumerian god. But you can find this word Nazi in Germanic Jews, such as Ashkenazis. Ashkenazis, they're a group of Germanic Nazis, and
Now, I believe it's pronounced Ashkenazi.
it's Ashkenazi or Nazi.
Nazi or Nazi.
Yeah, in English you can say that, but basically it's the same thing. It's, the pronunciation is Z in German is cis. I don't know, but that's why they when they came here in Cincinnati, they spelled Cincinnati as Zinzinnati, but in their language was actually Cincinnati. So anyways, we have a clip ready for you, how Hitler was set up the British crown, who were inbred from Germany. It's by Alex Jones. I don't know if it is ready or not, but then after that we come back, and there is a clip from the mainstream media that talks about U.S. banks funded the Third Reich. It was a part of History Channel, so it's another proof. And last but not the least is another clip. Zionists signed a deal with Hitler that was about the transfer agreement. We will watch that after that. But I don't know if the clip is ready or not, Sam. How Hitler was set up by the British Crown, by Alex Jones. All right.
Let's go to Don in Hawaii. Don, you're on the air.
Yeah, hey, Alex. I got two things. I hope you'll let me get to it.
Sure, go ahead.
First, I just finished reading William Shirer's book about the Third Reich.
Rise and Fall of the Third Reich.
Right, that's a great book. I've heard you talk many times on the show about mention something about at Dunkirk at the evacuation of Dunkirk, and then later
Rudolf Hess.
Yeah, Hess, and then Hitler deciding to attack Russia, and I've heard you say that there was a secret deal, and
Barbarossa
or something.
Yeah, no, that's even come out in the British newspapers in the last few years. But I've read so many books about World War II, no exaggeration, probably more than 100. I was kind of on that kick when I was 12, 13, 14, 15. And since then, I've probably read 10 or 15 books. But it's well over 100 total. So it all becomes foggy, which books and where. But I've seen news articles. In fact, guys, search engine, Hitler's secret treaty with England. And Rudolf Hess had the treaty, the deputy Fuhrer. And remember, he was a pilot. He flew in to England right at the start of the Blitz. He parachuted in, and they locked him up in the tower for the rest of his life with the treaty. And they had a deal. Of course, the King of England, Edward VIII, was a Nazi. There's photos of him hailing Hitler. Once the war started, he had to run to Spain to get out. And they'd made a deal. He was German himself. And Lord Milner Group, others said, we'll set up a dictator. This was decades before. Then we'll have a war with them. And Hitler allowed most of them and said, we won't let the military kill them all. We'll do some target practice on some of the ships with the Luftwaffe headed up by Hermann Goering, a World War I ace himself, head of the Luftwaffe. And they let most of them escape at Dunkirk from France to England. And then Hitler wouldn't target the major British cities. He would only target military bases. So the British launched a giant Lancaster attack to bomb Berlin, to psychologically manipulate Hitler, to retaliate, to bomb London and other British cities, to get British resolve behind the war. And I've even seen that on the History Channel. But yes, that's all there.
I thought maybe it had something to do with. I thought maybe it's had something to do with his decision to turn around and attack Stalin, Russia, and that I thought you meant maybe England had manipulated him and said, well, why don't you attack Russia, and then we'll make peace with you later or something. You know.
No, there were overtures, and that's why Heinrich Himmler and others turned themselves into the Allies and then were murdered, committed suicide. You know, they would show up, and that's why the British, just like the globalists set up Saddam Hussein so he was easy to defeat because most of his top generals were double agents. It was the same thing with the Germans. They were British intelligence. And so Hitler never had a chance. It was all a massive setup. And that's in all the major mainline history if you really mine down deep. No, but then Hitler figured out he'd been double-crossed, and there was a deal with Stalin to take over Germany and divide up Europe. And so he turned, saying, if I can rush in with Barbarossa, Operation Barbarossa, and take over with a blitzkrieg Russia, then I can bolster and use what he called Aryan conscripts from the Russian frontier with genetic test that they would use, and they did get tens of thousands of those, but not enough. Then we'll be able to defeat England or sue for peace.
Yeah. He had been planning Barbarossa and planning to attack Russia for quite a long time, and then just finally did it. I don't know what... It did seem like there's a lot of things in that they didn't explain, or there were so many things that seemed like they were an accident, or, oh, that was just...
Yeah, no, Shearer's book's good for an overview. If you want to hear about the secret societies and all the intrigue and how they set up the SS along Jesuit lines, it's Order of the Death's Head by Heinz Hobel. But they all have disinformation. You've got to read hundreds of books and then study original history and declassified documents to get a full spectrum breakdown.
What did you think about how Hitler used to talk all the time about, or a lot about, international financiers, and you know, he usually said international Jewish financiers manipulating the countries into war and stuff. That's what he would talk. He talked about them and the Jewish financiers grouped around Roosevelt that wanting to get him into war and stuff. Why do you think he talked about that? Was he like being disingenuous, or was he a dupe that didn't realize?
Well, no. I mean, what? Of course, there was the Rothschilds, and the Rothschilds. It's been in Anthony Sutton's books off of congressional Senate hearings that they would always fund both sides, and so you know there were those financiers involved in the larger system. I mean, World War I was financed by different financiers, including the Rothschilds. That's what globalism is these corporations play groups off against each other. But Hitler had a brand of eugenics that was going to focus in on mainly the Jews and others, Slavs, because they wanted to kill most of the Slavs for, what is it, Lebensraum, or if that's the proper pronunciation, living space. And so it was really just a racial way to get people hyped up. But I mean, always, there's some sliver of reality within that. But Hitler also thought that England was more Aryan than Germany because England hadn't been overrun by some of the Eastern European groups and also the Arabs. And so that's why he didn't want to bomb England or bomb the cities, because of the precious Aryan blood. I mean, it's all really a bunch of convoluted stuff, but you can read about that in My Struggle, Mein Kampf. Of course, I read that. I remember I was about 13 at the bookstore. My mom dropped me off at the mall, and I walked over and bought Mein Kampf, and I went up to buy it, and the black lady behind the counter freaked out and was like thinking I was a Nazi. And I said, "Lady, you're selling this book. Just because I'm reading something doesn't mean I'm that." I mean, at 13 years old, I knew that. And it was, it's just insane. But again, they go in and pick nationalistic groups. It's high-powered psychological warfare. They build it up. They financed Hitler's ideology. He was given Rockefeller awards. He was given all this funding and then told he was a big hero. Up until about 37, 38, he was a rock star in the U.S. Time Magazine Man of the Year. He was in gardening magazines. He was all over radio. He was being praised. And so he was encouraged by IBM and encouraged by a lot of these big, powerful groups to do what he did. So there were other factions, and there was a pro-Hitler faction with the Bushes, and this came out in the McCormick-Dickstein Committee, and Smedley Butler exposed it. They tried to hire him, the Marine Corps